Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel for day 2 of the 12 days of Buildmas. If you haven't been following, I am doing a build video every single day leading up to Christmas for 12 days straight, and today's video is going to be a tangled floating island. Something else I did want to mention quickly at the start is that there is a huge percentage of you who are not subscribed to my channel, who watch my videos. So if you are not yet subscribed and you do want to get more DDV content from me, whether that's build inspiration, kind of facts, information, tips and tricks, please do consider subscribing and hit the notification bell to be notified every single time I post something on the channel. Thank you so much to I'm Just Me who suggested this on my community tab. This was their suggestion, so this video is inspired by you. I did want to do this anyway after they mentioned it in the showcase and getting Flynn, but this was my sign to definitely do it. If you do want to request something for Buildmas, there is still time to do so on my community tab, or to also do on the comments of this video or in my Discord server, which the link for is in the description. But on that note, let's get started. So as you can see, getting started, I decided to do this build on the Forest of Valor floating island. It just gave me a lot of space up here and I'm really enjoying kind of getting to grips with the floating island, starting to decorate them and figuring out the layout of everything. So the houses and buildings I'm using in this build is obviously Flynn's house that we got in the Storybook Vale, Rapunzel's tower that we got in the Rift in Time DLC, the Corona castle which actually came in the premium shop a while ago, and then also the Snuggly Duckling tavern house that also came in the premium shop. So there's quite a few buildings that are going up here, so I wanted to figure out a layout for everything. And as you can see, to start off with, I'm starting with the castle section. I wanted this to be right at the back but bang in the middle to kind of be like the center of the build, because I wanted it to feel like the castle is kind of the center of this land. And kind of stood out the most, so I wanted to focus on that first. So as you can see, I've used some of the big topiaries to create this royal look, added in the Corona fountain from the premium shop, the little carriage that we can get from the aerial bundle, and then also a lot of more kind of royal themed items. I still wanted it to have that rustic feel, so I went for the Main Street path that's this nice brown colour because I wanted it to fit with the rustic look of the fences and the castle itself. So I did go more royal, but more rural royal, if that makes sense. And it kind of gave me this space to work with in order to decorate the castle, to figure out what kind of layout I wanted to go for it, and this was definitely the main focus of what I started with. Now in this build I wanted to create 2 makeshift ponds, because obviously we don't have ponds up here on the floating islands, but also these gave me a symmetrical look, so I did use some Touch of Magic rugs to kind of create these really simple little pond areas. I just felt like it filled this big gap in as effectively as I could. I didn't want them to look too open, and it kind of added to the nice structure. And then I went for some symmetrical trees, so as you can see I went for some of the Ancient's Landing trees as well as a lot of the base game ones and a couple of the Storybook Vale ones. There is a huge variety throughout this build of trees I used. I wanted it to be very whimsical, and I also wanted each area to have a very different vibe. So for the royal side of things, I did go in with a couple of different coloured trees, some bright foliage, and also added some of the floral pathway you get with the Moana tapestry around some of the bushes and some of the pathway. I absolutely love how this looks, and now that we can angle it, it looks a lot more natural. So I do add this in throughout the whole build, as you'll see going forward, but for now I wanted to put it around these open areas of this structure and then finish up with the last few symmetrical trees at the front. Now Now, once I'd done the royal section, I then wanted to figure out where I wanted to include the other buildings and larger structures. I knew I wanted to include this blue gazebo that you actually can get from Scrooge's store in the Vale. And I wanted to include this because I wanted this area to feel like this would be kind of an area that's kind of attached to the palace but slightly off course, and I felt like this could be a really cute spot that maybe when Rapunzel had grown up in the palace she would have come out here and kind of relaxed and chilled out, and I wanted it to kind of be a like commemorative place for her that maybe her parents had put in when she disappeared. Just a really cute little whimsical spot. So I did go in with that gazebo, added in a tangled couch, and then obviously a load of the floating lanterns. These were from the lovely Monsters Star Path and they are absolutely gorgeous. Obviously if you don't have these, you could also use the time bending little lanterns you can get from time bending with the Rift in Time DLC, as well as the little Pascal lanterns that you can get from completing a Rift in Time, and then you can pick them up in Scrooge's after that. They could be really good alternatives if you don't have these floating ones. Now around this area I decided to again add in a variety of different trees. I also added some of the book tiles down the pathway, and then I added in a load of foliage. I wanted to make this really bright and bold. I added obviously in some of the autumnal style ones, some of the glowing mushrooms from Scrooge's store, and then a bunch of different plants to give it this whimsical fairy core feel. I wanted this area to feel kind of magical and like this kind of whimsical spot away from the rest of the build. So I did go in with some of the flowers again, and as I said, added in a lot of the more fairy style foliage items that we have in the game. Now to finish off this area, I did add in more foliage and trees around the back, just because I wanted it to feel like when you walked through, you weren't kind of just seeing off of the edge of this island. I wanted it to feel like you are in the centre of a forest. So I did bulk it out with a lot of foliage and trees. Obviously, as there is its own item limit on this island, I could do as many as I wanted to. And then after that, I created this little stone wall, and then I moved on to the Snuggly Duckling Tavern, which is our next section of the build. Now for this, I obviously wanted to keep it slightly divided, so I did add in the Mulan wooden archway and then obviously the stone brick wall to kind of section this area off and make it feel like it is further away than it actually is. And I went in with the new Flynn bar and plopped some rock rugs underneath to make it feel like kind of just this outdoor bar space with some stalls, and obviously I'll add some food into it later on. And then obviously I added in the tavern to then decorate with some more seating outside and have this really rustic look. So that is the area that I am working on now and kind of figuring out the layout of all the furniture I want to use. Now again, I used some more stone brick wool to kind of contain this area. I did swap it for the other one just because I felt like this darker floral just suited this tavern better, because it's obviously a lot more of a darker vibe and the other section is a lot more bright and glowy. So I did swap those around, and then I started decorating around the outside of those with a lot of barrels, crates, rustic items. A lot of these are craftables, so they're pretty easy to obviously get your hands on. And then I created the little barrel table section inside these walls to be the kind of main seating area of the tavern, and started adding in the main kind of structures I wanted to make sure I'd included, like lighting. So I used some of the craftable lampposts. I also then figured out the layout of the rock path to make sure it leads up to the tavern, and also obviously leads out of this area as well, before I can then go in and really look at the smaller furniture items as well as the foliage that I want to include in here. Now for foliage in this area as well as trees, I wanted it to keep a bit more traditional and wanted it to kind of look a bit more rustic rather than the previous area we just done. So I added in a lot of dark foliage, I added in some of the forest bushes. I obviously did still keep some of the bind bushes and trees in there, so some of the oranges and the autumnal colours. I wanted this area to have a nice autumnal feel to it, so I did make sure to include those as well. And then I went in with a bunch of ferns and a bunch of other smaller foliage items to really wrap up this area and give it this nice whimsical look. I did obviously add a couple of pumpkins and things about, and obviously added some of the bookish tiles into this area as well, as I felt like it just made sense to continue this theme on. And then I started working on the front of the palace to kind of make sure this section in the middle kind of tied together and made sense. So I added in a little cart as well as some stalls to kind of get this area sort of semi put in, to then figure out how I wanted to kind of continue on this pathway to then go over to the second side of the island. So as you can see for this middle section, I decided to actually continue the pathway down and create this middle courtyard area. I knew I wanted to use this rustic clock tower in here, the craftable one, because I just love how it looks and I felt like it fit the theme of this whole island really, really well. So I was trying to figure out a way to display that, and actually I decided if I continue this path down from this royal section, it would feel like this is the centre of the land, and then all of these more secluded areas off to the sides are kind of further away than they look on this island. They would be a vast travel away, kind of how they are in the movie. So I wanted to kind of give it that structure. Obviously, I couldn't make a courtyard in front of the royal palace as grand and as beautiful as the one in the actual film, because I wouldn't have had space, because the one in the movie is absolutely gorgeous. So I went for kind of a smaller condensed version of this, still kept with the bright and colourful theme, added in some stalls like those who are in the movie are kind of selling their goods at, and had this really nice whimsical vibe. But I obviously condensed it a lot, but still wanted to include a bunch of items, as well as going in and adding in some of the time bending lanterns as well, to make it look like the royal palace had kind of displayed these around in honour of Rapunzel and had kept this theme going over time. After that, we are moving on to Flynn's home. As you can see, I've popped him in the back left corner. I wanted to make sure he kind of had a really secluded area, so he felt like he was the furthest away, him and Rapunzel. So I went for more of a whimsical vibe up here, again, similar to the right-hand side corner, and added in some of the mushrooms from Storybook Vale because I felt like they just fit Flynn's vibe, honestly. With him coming in ever after in the Vale anyway, it just made sense to kind of keep this going. So I added some of those in, a bunch of trees behind his house, as well as one of Tiana's water towers because I felt like it fit with his house. Kind of looked like it was built into it. And then added in one of the harvester beds from the time bending furniture items, which I felt like fit him really, really well. And a little washing line as well. I wanted to keep this area really whimsical, really rustic. I know Flynn probably wouldn't have as much going on outside his house as this. I feel like he probably wouldn't put as much pride into it, but I felt like I wanted to make it really, really feel like this nice, secluded camping style area with a little bonfire, and obviously kept in the mushroom vibe to give it that nice whimsical feel and feel like it is kind of in the middle of nowhere. Now for pathways in here, I again went with the rock spots. I didn't want to add a built up pathway and make it look too overgrown, so I went for the rock spots again, and then I again added in a bunch of the flower path. If you don't have this particular one from the Vale, there is a pink cherry blossom one you can get with the base game, so that is an alternative if you did want to kind of do this path look with the flowers, but didn't have this particular one. But I really, really love how this one looks. I think the colours of it work really, really well. And then I started adding in a bunch of foliage around the build. As I said, I went for more of a whimsical feel up here, so I did add in some of the giant flowers, some of the little mushroom spots, as well as some of the Vale plants that are a little bit more eclectic and a little bit more colourful. And so I wanted to keep it very bright, very fairy core up here, and make it feel that Flynn was kind of in the middle of nowhere. So I did go in and start adding foliage around, and I was obviously adding in more trees to make this. Now the final section we're working on obviously is Rapunzel's area where her tower is. I obviously would love to have made this feel more secluded and further away from the palace if I could, but space-wise it just wasn't possible. So I wanted to use trees and foliage to obviously make this area feel as enclosed as possible. And it's not essentially movie accurate because I did give Rapunzel some really cute hangout spots up here with some of her furniture items. So for example, one spot that I did was a little art class area where I used some easels and the art table to make it feel like she would have people up here learning art from her. And I also wanted to include some little cozy seating areas as well, so it obviously isn't movie accurate, but I wanted to interpret it as Rapunzel's kind of had her freedom and she's happy, and she uses this tower as her little home away from home after the conclusion of the film. That was kind of the vibe I was going for. So I wanted to really give her some cozy spots where she could hang out with friends. I could display some of her gorgeous furniture items and also just feel really, really bright and whimsical up here. So I started adding those in, continued adding lighting all around Flynn's area and obviously the spots of the build where I'd forgotten to do so. And then I started looking at the furniture that I had left to use and working out the best spot for everything to go in. So one of the spots I did want to include was Rapunzel's little picnic blanket. This is from Scrooge's store. So I did pop that into this bottom corner next to the art area, and I start decorating with the more eclectic kind of random items around. I wanted to make sure I included a load of the barrels and crates around the different kind of open areas and make it feel really, really rustic and kind of go a bit wild with the item limit. And I also added in some bookish tiles around the rock pathways once again to keep that theme going, and then added some trees and foliage behind the art and the picnic area to really bulk it out and make it feel like a forest. I do go in at the end of this and like sporadically add trees and foliage behind everything, because as I walked through I realized there were some gaps and stuff, and I really wanted it to feel really like a forest and not like we're floating in the middle of the sky. So that was something I do work on as we go on later, but for now I added in again a lot of the whimsical plants, some of the veil ones where we've got the big flowers and the mushrooms, into Rapunzel's area to kind of show the fact that this isn't part of the main village of this island. It is much more secluded, much more in the middle of nowhere, and it's somewhere that you definitely discover after a long travel. Now for the final little spot in the top corner, I wanted to display the gorgeous mushroom circle that we got with the Veil shop. This obviously isn't directly Tangled themed or Tangled related, so you could definitely leave this out because it's not an essential part of the film or the lore. But I did want to display it into this whimsical mushroom area. I wasn't sure what to put in this top corner, and I felt like this item would be such a cute thing that you would discover maybe when you're venturing in this kind of magical forest. It's not really part of Rapunzel's area, but it's also not part of Flynn's. It's kind of its own standalone little area to discover, so I wanted to include that in here, add a lot of mushies and obviously lots of plants around it. And then I use this area to kind of like mark in my rock pathway, add some lighting to, and then I also go in the middle of this, you'll see I add a big tree and lots of foliage to really block it off from Rapunzel's tower. I didn't want it to feel like this big open gap. I wanted to kind of block that in as much as possible, so I obviously add in some meadow grass to make it feel overgrown, but then around that I add in lots of foliage to really block off this center section. And as you can see, this is the final build. We are starting at the front of this like main courtyard area, and as you can see, I've added in a bunch of the floating lanterns absolutely everywhere, and I have created this courtyard section. We've got the little greengrocer's stalls, we've got a lot of crates and barrels to make it feel really rustic out here, and then the clock tower as our center display. And then leading into the castle, I've added in some of the banners we got with Merida's Crest. I know they're not actual Tangled Land of Corona banners, but I felt like they still worked. And then in the courtyard for the castle, we've got the Corona fountain from the premium shop, some of the topiary mazes to kind of be these big standpoints in here and give it this royal feel. I love that the pathway still makes it feel really, really warm in here and still gives off that royal look, but in a much more rustic way. I felt like it just fit the colour scale of Tangled itself, but also of the colouring of the castle and the fountain. I added some benches on either side and some of the craftable lampposts to be the lighting points in here. We've then got a little carriage in front of the castle to really show off that royal look, and then obviously by the sides of the castle we've got the symmetrical trees and foliage to really blend it in. Now as we head round to the right hand side of the castle, this is our first spot, which is obviously where the Snuggly Duckling Tavern is. I absolutely love how this turned out. It looks really, really rustic. It's quite a big open space, but I liked the idea of it feeling kind of like you'd stumbled upon this. We've got the barrel tables at the side with loads of food displayed on it. We've got the little stone fence walls to kind of contain the area, and then we've obviously got some more of the autumnal kind of scarecrow and carts and hay bales off on the side to kind of be a lot more of a whimsical look. And then we've obviously got the Flynn bar at the back with more food on. We've also got the tavern piano, which is craftable from the time bending furniture items, which I felt like just fits so well for the vibe of the tavern. I actually have one displayed inside because I have done the interior of this house skin, so I wanted it to kind of match that. Then as we head through this like archway, we have got our whimsical little gazebo area. This is where it becomes a lot more fairy core and whimsical back here, and I really did want this to look like a spot that kind of was made for Rapunzel to kind of hang out in as she grew up, but obviously when she disappeared and went away, they kind of kept it there to remember her, so they've added a lot of lanterns around. And then as we head back through to the other side, we first walk into Rapunzel's area where she currently is, and we've got the little picnic area with loads of books around. We've also got her art area where she maybe teaches people art, she displays all her artwork, and I just love this little spot. I feel like the easels just make it look like such a little area that she'd be able to entertain people at. And then obviously in front of her tower we've got a bunch of foliage, we've got some really bright trees behind to show off her tower, and then next to it we've got the little Pascal lantern and more flowers. I wanted a lot of flower pots around to fit her vibe. Then on this side of the entrance we've got some stalls. I've placed some fruit and veggie seeds in there, and then we've got our little toadstool mushroom area, which is just a nice another whimsical spot for them to enjoy. Now the final section, obviously as you can see, is Flynn's area. This area has a lot more of a rustic feel. I've added in the new bathtub and the outhouse to feel like this is where he'd kind of get ready for the day, and then I've also added in the washing line at the back to give it this rustic look, as well as the harvester bed to feel like maybe he'd crash out and sleep here after being on a long journey away. I really feel like this area has a lot of his vibe to it, and I obviously did go in after recording and added in the food and the flowers all across the ground. Flynn's area doesn't have too many flowers, but Rapunzel's I really went flower heavy. So here are some shots of the final island. There are a lot of shots to go through, so I tried to make them as short as possible, but I wanted to show you each kind of different angle of the different areas I created. But I hope you guys do like it. As you know, Tangled is one of my favourite Disney films of all time, and I really wanted to make something that I felt like really fit them. And after hearing Rachel in the showcase say you could make a Tangled floating island, I said bet, and I went for it. So I'm glad I got round to it, and thank you again for the suggestion to do so. I'm really happy that I managed to do it, and including all the different houses and kind of buildings we had that fit the Tangled theme, I feel like it really became something that I really liked. And obviously, as I said as I was going through, the kind of impression I wanted this island to give is that all these different areas are far away from each other, which is hard to do in Disney Dreamlight Valley in general because the biomes are only so big. But I really wanted it to feel like this castle is the center of this royal country or royal city, and then these other areas off to the side are far away. You'd have to travel to get to them, and I wanted it to kind of have that vibe. So that was what I really tried to capture with this. So that is the final island. Let me know down below what you think. and if you're a fan of Tangled, I hope I did it justice for you. I feel like I captured my view of Tangled as a film and my love for Tangled, and I'm so excited I actually got to put a Tangled island into my valley somewhere. So I feel like this is probably going to stick around for a while because I really enjoyed doing it and just love having something Tangled related up here on a floating island that I can keep around for a while. As I said at the start, there is still time to put in your suggestions for Buildmas, so pop them in my community tab. There is a post in there, and you can also put it in the comments of this video, but also in my Discord, which the link is in the description. So if you do want to join over there, you can pop your suggestions in there and engage with the community as well. And something else I did want to highlight, as I did at the start, is that there is a huge majority of you who are not subscribed to my channel who do watch my content. So if you are not yet subscribed, please do subscribe, and also hit the notification bell, as you'll be notified every single time that I post a Buildmas video for the next 10 days, I think now, and also as well when I go live and post other content as well. That would mean so much, and I appreciate all the love and support. Make sure you like the video also, and I will see you all in the next video tomorrow for day 3 of Buildmas. Bye!